Welcome to our live stream. Today, on this video, the question we're asking really is, how do we make time for beginning Greek? One of the things I've said for a long time is that beginning Greek is one of the most challenging parts of actually learning the language of the New Testament. Now, that's not to say that all the other parts are really easy, but the hardest part tends to be beginning Greek, that first phase that you work through. So one of the challenges with that then becomes, well, how do I find the time? Because it is one of those things that requires quite a lot of time. And I've done videos on this in the past. In fact, in the description below, you'll find a link to a video which is asking and answering the question, well, how much time should I take or do I need on a day-by-day basis to learn Greek? So I encourage you, if you've not checked that out, to go check it out. But let me summarize it very briefly for you here. If you're looking to learn biblical Greek, then you should expect to spend around about an hour a day for the first, little bit while you're going through beginning Greek. Now, it varies with some people. With some people, it's a bit more. With other people, it's a bit less. But nonetheless, about an hour a day. Now, the reason in this live stream is important is because where do we find that hour, right? That's the question. And what about if we need more? And what about if we need, how do we do that? We've got jobs, we've got families, we've got other things that we have to do. Where do I get an hour from in order to be able to do this? So what I've done today is I've invited productivity expert Reagan Rose to join me on this live stream. And Reagan is... Thank you, Reagan, for joining us. Reagan is from redeemingproductivity.com. He's a friend of ours, a friend from, we've known each other from seminary days. We went to the same seminary together. And now he started a ministry sort of helping Christians become more productive for the glory of God, which is fantastic and a long overdue ministry, one that I've been looking forward to for a long time. So, Reagan, thank you so much for joining us today on Master New Testament Greek.
Hey, it's great to be here. I'm excited to talk about this topic.
Yeah, well, it's awesome to have you with us. And as we get into our time today, then, what I want to do is we're going to work through really three kind of ideas in terms of where do you find time. And the first one that I want us to sort of just talk about here is, how do we, thinking about our time from a more of a macro level, from a broader perspective, how do we think about time, more broadly? And Reagan, I thought one of the things that might be really cool to do just to start off is just to think about, well, what do you do on a week-by-week basis? How do we start to plan our time generally? Do you want to just share with us a little bit about your experience, what you do on a week-by-week basis to plan your time? And I think this is just really helpful for all of us, really, to make sure we're using our time well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing is a lot of us don't know where our time's actually going. And I think for a lot of people, a good first step is to try to get visibility on how you're spending your time. There's a lot of stuff out there that will show you a little, like an Excel spreadsheet where you can track how you're spending your time the week. I always recommend people do that if they're first trying to get into managing their time or trying to find space to do something new in their life. The first step, I think, is just to get some visibility on it. What are you doing? Because a lot of times we're shocked. I mean, I remember when the screen time feature came out for iPhone, and I was blown away. And it was like, you average 4 hours a day on your phone. I was like, no, I don't. And so I think that's a good first step is figuring out where is the time going.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a good thing just to plan your week out. Just like at the beginning of the week, just sort of think then, well, what will I do? So there's going to be some pockets of time during the week that we can, I can think of times even now, particularly for me, I think evenings are one of those times that I could do a better job of optimizing. So we can often look at our time on a macro level and find areas of time that we can, use more effectively or reallocate even. For instance, you might not be, like, for me, I'm not very effective last thing at night, but maybe that's a good opportunity for me to actually, go to bed earlier, for instance, rather than stay up and watch, TV or whatever it happens to be that I'm doing that time. Sometimes it'll be reading, but it just depends. And I think, those evening times or whatever it is that we're kind of least effective can be times that we can reallocate to other things that are going to be helpful as well. And so I think then that allows us to think about our week more generally and plan that week out. So how do you plan your week, Reagan? What do you do with that?
Yeah, I kind of look at what my big long-term goals are. I think you and I are the same way. We have yearly and quarterly goals. And then from that, I have kind of my monthly goals. What are the things that are going to help me make progress on that? So in this instance, if my monthly goal or my quarterly goal is to, go through, learn the basics of New Testament Greek, well, then I need to work backwards from that and kind of reverse engineer. How would I get to that each day? How would I find some hours during the week to do that? And then I actually put those into the calendar, block out a little bit of time for each of those things during the day. I've heard people talk about when it comes to budgeting, like when you're trying to save money, that you should pay yourself first, and then you kind of figure out how to make time for everything else. I think the same is true for time management. If you decide in advance that this is a priority, plan for it, put it on the schedule, block it out in your calendar before the other stuff kind of creeps in that usually tends to take up that space.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And, I've only just recently started doing that, actually putting these things on the calendar. And I've done it in big blocks to sort of block out big pieces of time so that I can actually concentrate. But it's been really helpful because I think, again, that is, you want to start, and even I think Stephen Covey talks about the same thing, get these big rocks, drop those in first so that, we know where we're going to spend the time that we need. And so when it comes to things like learning Greek, then we have to ask, okay, what's the best time of day for me to learn Greek? And that's the second thing really that I want us to move on to. So once we've thought about our week generally, or our time generally, and we can find those kind of chunks, then the next thing to do really is to actually work out how to make those times work. And let me just pause for a moment and just say, if you're getting value out of this video, let me encourage you to hit the like button. That helps this video get found, and if you and other people to find it and value it as well, and hopefully it'll be useful to somebody else too. And if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button and the notify bell as well, so that you know when new videos are released. So the next thing then, Reagan, is to ask the question, what's the best time of day? What do you find for you is the best time to work on something like beginning Greek? Because I know you've learned Greek, right? You've been through this. Tell us how you sort of structured your time, or what time of day you would use for this now.
Yeah, I'm a morning person. I understand not everyone is, but I still nudge people in this direction to at least try to be a morning person. And the reason I think mornings are a good time for building new habits is because mornings have the advantage of being focused time. If you are on a good sleep schedule, when you wake up, that tends to be when your energy is at its highest. You're less distracted. You don't have as much cares from the day weighing you down like you do in the evening. And so I like to optimize for having a morning routine, having some time to do my most focused efforts. Especially if you wake up a little earlier than other people, that's huge, because that's one of the only times during your day when your phone's not going to be buzzing, when email's not coming in, when no one's expecting you to be interruptible because they're not awake yet. That's an amazing time to do something focused and build it as a habit, because, as you know, habits, and I really do think that as you study Greek, you need to make a habit of it so you don't fall off the wagon. But habits, you get out of doing a habit because it gets interrupted enough times or you miss enough days. And so I like to think, what's the time that's going to give me the best chance at doing this every day, that nothing's going to come up and get in the way? And for me, that's mornings.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I think mornings are the best time for me as well, for much the same reasons, really. And I find, it's really early in the morning now, like it's 5:30 a.m. when we're doing this live stream, at least for me. I understand that most people, when they get up in the morning, and I feel it kind of right now, that when you get up in the morning, you don't feel at your peak within the first 3 minutes, right? We realize that. So there is a time between when you get up and when you're effective in actually doing those things. And there needs to be kind of a routine that goes with that to acknowledge and recognize that as well. And so my recommendation is not to sort of just get up and expect that you're going to be crisp and quick and that kind of thing, but to really start to have just some basic habits even, or routines that you can then start to work through that will then prepare you for that work that you've got coming up. Now, again, it doesn't need to be like 3 hours of work before you get to your Greek. It just needs to be it's the first 5 minutes that's the hardest. If you can get through that, then you're in a good place. So if you can get through that first 5 to 10 minutes, you're probably going to be pretty close to peak even if you're not feeling like rushing out the door and exercising or whatever it happens to be. Maybe exercise is the way to get to that kind of peak. I don't know. But having that morning routine is really helpful. And I want to just let me give you a plug here, Reagan. Reagan has a course called Power Mornings, which is all really about how to get through that the morning and make those more effective. So I want to encourage you, if you're interested in learning more about mornings, to go check out Power Mornings at redeemingproductivity.com. So another thing too about mornings is they become, it's often easy to get up and our minds are a little bit blurry or scattered or whatever it happens to be. We've been thinking about things in our sleep or whatever it is. What are some things that you find helpful, Reagan, to prepare for that early morning? Can you give us just like one or two tips in terms of how to actually make those times effective without, having to wait 20, 30, 50 minutes before you start to get into them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing where people go wrong is that they forget that your morning routine is dependent on your evening routine. I'm an early riser. I didn't always used to be an early riser. And it's not that I don't get that much sleep. I get a lot of sleep each night. The trick is really just going to bed earlier. If you're trying to wake up at 4 a.m, but you're going to bed at like midnight, well, of course you're not going to have energy. So I think that's the main thing to start with, is having a bedtime. You're an adult probably, but I still think you should have a bedtime. Even the science has shown that people who go to sleep at the same time every night and wake up at the same time every morning, they tend to be less groggy. You just get into a routine. That's how your body's sort of made to work. So that's the first thing, is have a bedtime so you get adequate sleep. The second thing is, for me, the first thing I do when I wake up is I drink 2 huge glasses of water. I have coffee after that, but the water is just huge. Your brain needs water to function. Your whole body does. And you would be astonished, if this isn't something you already do, about how much more awake you feel after drinking 2 glasses of water, like almost right away. And one more thing is just doing something like you were saying to sort of ease out of the being asleep thing. So after I've had my water, I have my coffee, and I drink that while I write in my journal and I read my Bible, and I often read some other books too, just a few pages. Gets my brain thinking, kind of gets the fog out. And after a little bit of time with that, I am ready to go. And for me, my current thing that I'm doing in the mornings, like work-wise, is I'm writing. I'm spending a lot of time writing. I'm fully awake by that point after I've done those few things, and I can actually focus on what I have to do.
Yeah, and I think those are really good tips. And I'd be liking this video right now if I could hit the button. But those are really good tips. And I think, again, thinking about me and my own, thinking back at that macro level again, one of the key things for me that I could improve on is actually that evening going to bed earlier, to plan to wake up a little bit earlier in the morning. And I think that would make a difference. Another thing too, just with that, is that often it helps to actually have both a place and the place set up before you go to bed at night as well. That way, when you get up in the morning, and I find it particularly, what I've found is that it's really good to walk past that spot on your way to get water or coffee or whatever it happens to be, or both, in the morning, so that you see it there, and that just gives your brain like a mental cue. Oh yeah, this is next. Right, and then you go there, and everything's there, set up, ready to go. And so that means then, and if you're learning biblical Greek, there are really 4 habits. And again, you'll find a link in the description below to the video explaining what those 4 habits are. But one of the things that you'll find is that if you're going to do those 4 habits, then why not actually have, say, your mobile device there? So if you're going to do vocabulary, for instance, well, maybe even just charge your mobile device where you're going to be doing that. So one of the first things you do, you don't go and pick up your phone from your bed and stay in bed and scroll endlessly or anything like that. You get up and then you go get some water, then you come back, and then the first thing you do on your phone is actually to go through one of those 4 habits, be it vocab, be it passing. Maybe you're going to write paradigms out. So have the paradigms printed off, or if you're going to use an iPad for that, again, have that charging next to that spot. And then, of course, you want to have your translations there ready to go as well. So I would recommend that you set up the spot, the location as well, so that gives you additional help and provides so that it's a visual queue, and then everything's just there. You don't have to go, oh, I forgot to get this. Oh, I needed to print that. Oh, I needed, so everything's right there, ready to go, and you can just sort of start to flow directly into what you're trying to do there. Anything else you want to add to that, Reagan?
No, I love that. And I was just going to piggyback on that about your place. Making the spot where you do your morning routine or where you do whatever you're working on, making it somewhere you want to be. That has just been huge for me, having positive associations with it, where it's not too cold or too hot. I used to do my morning routine in the garage. It didn't work out in the winter months. It was too cold, and I'd get out there like, I don't want to do it. Making sure it's picked up, that it's not a mess, that your stuff's ready to go. And even as much as like having it smell nice, have a diffuser or, something, just so you get there, you have your favorite blanket, you got your cup of coffee, and it's actually something you look forward to, not like, oh, I got to drag myself to do it. That's been massive for me, where I actually want to get up and do the stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if you've got tips of your own as you're listening to this and you want to share those, leave them in the chat. And we might even highlight some of those as we come toward the end here in just a few minutes. So we'd love to hear from you as well and get your feedback. And if you don't find that mornings are helpful, again, just let us know in the chat so that we can sort of see that and we can work with that. And I know, for instance, Reagan, that it doesn't work for everyone. Like, for example, what about if you're a young mother and you've got children, and every time you walk from your bedroom to the kitchen, you got to walk past the kids' room, and of course they have that radar on, and the same with the father as well, I guess. They have that radar there to say, oh, somebody's up, it's time to get up. Hey, hello, you can come and get me now. Have you got any tips or advice or help for people in that situation?
Yeah, no, that's a tough one. I have two little ones myself, and so I know that it can be a challenge to find time. I think you have to be creative. You have to roll with the punches and kind of identify those spaces that are going to make the most sense for you. Especially with kids, sometimes evenings are better for these sort of things. If you put your kids down at 7 or 8 p.m., you have a little bit of time before you go to sleep. That might work better for you. But I think modify things based on what works. Maybe don't leave the bedroom and have your little area in your bedroom so that the kids don't hear you or try to get out and find you.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, I think what we used to do is we had to train our children that they could not, when they were really, really little, we had to train them that they could not come out of the room until we came and got them. And yeah, that included things like fences and things like that. But once they figured it out, they were actually really good. And we would be awake, we could have coffee, the kids would be happily playing in their bedroom, and it gave us just that little bit of time that made a huge difference. And so, it may not be mornings too. I mean, for instance, in that case, it may be that mornings just don't work. Maybe you've got kids to get off to school while you've got other ones trying to get up. And again, you've got to balance that, and that's tricky. So maybe for some people, it's going to be evenings, or it's going to be through the middle of the day or some other time while you're, that you have to find to work on your Greek. And I think, so it doesn't have to be mornings. We're sort of recommending mornings here because it's the time when your mind is clearest, where you have the fewest interruptions, when you can have, what's the other ones, Reagan? Some of the other...
The best chance at consistency, because you can't be interrupted as easily. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's good reasons to do it in the morning. I had a whole bunch of other reasons that I've written down somewhere, but I don't have them in front of me right now. But I had, I think, about 10 reasons why mornings are the best time for this. So there is, and I think too, just having slept, having less on your mind, and being able to just concentrate. So all those things are good reasons for morning, but not everybody can always make mornings work. So take whatever time you can. And again, you just want to think ahead and plan. What do I need to do to make that time available there? And let me just add one more thing with this, is that when we say that you're going to need about an hour a day to learn Greek, we're not saying that you're going to have to spend 1 hour block learning Greek, right? It may be you can do that, but for a lot of people, that's actually more than is both possible and necessary as well. And that leads on to the third area, and that's really around habits, okay? And one of the things we want to encourage you to do is not only plan your time ahead and not only think about what's the best time and plan for that time, like mornings in this case. At least that's what we've been advocating. But thirdly, you want to also use the different pockets during the day to actually work on this, particularly with these 4 habits that I've talked about: vocabulary, paradigms, working through the past Greek and practicing your passing, and then doing your translation work. Those things don't all take a whole lot of time. You can do, and I would recommend that this is where mobile devices are so helpful. These allow you to have your vocabulary and passing apps and so on with you wherever you are, which means that in those little pockets of time, you can actually use those to then practice your Greek. Give us a couple of examples of this, Reagan, that might work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one is just finding habits you're already doing and either replacing them or sort of piggybacking off of them. Excuse me. There's things you're already doing throughout the day. Hopefully you're brushing your teeth. That's a great time, a good little reminder to go through your paradigms maybe, or go through your vocab. Your lunch break, if you work full time, or everyone eats lunch, find some time there. There's even the science of memory. I'm sure you know this, Daryl, is that spaced repetition is like the best way to learn these sorts of things. Like, there's actually an advantage to doing this several times throughout the day to review your vocab, rather than trying to cram it all into one big chunk of time during the day, because that's how you learn. It's right when you're on the edge of forgetting it, and then you test yourself, that it gets stuck in your brain. So there really is an advantage to doing things these way. So if you feel like, oh man, I can't carve out enough time to do this, I just have to get it into little slots. Well, there's some positives to it.
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, most of the apps, the good vocab apps, put it that way, do actually have spaced repetition in them, so that they automatically expand the time between them. So we use Flashcards Deluxe a lot, which is a pretty generic memorizing app, but it's really effective, and it does have a really good built-in spaced repetition app that you can have up to a year between reviews of a particular word. And again, it's going to pop up and it's just going to say, hey, you've got some words due. You can customize how many words. So that means you can do it in spaces where all you need to do is review just like 10 vocab words, and you're ready to go again, and you've emptied it out. And it's, again, it's going to remind you when you need to do that. But of course, you can just do it when you have that next pocket of time. And so good opportunities are things like, even just if you can go to, say, the DMV or even Starbucks or anywhere really where there's going to be a line or a queue, just sort of take the time while you're standing there, not to do social media, but to actually, just actually review your vocabulary or do a little bit of passing. It only takes 1 or 2 minutes, those little 1 or 2 minute chunks, and you can actually make a little bit of progress on your Greek. And it just keeps it fresh in your mind. Like Reagan was saying, with spaced repetition, not only are you reviewing the words, but you're actually keeping your mind in the Greek mindset, if you like, so that you can continually, just refresh, review, and rebuild and build a new neural connections, if you like, within your synapses and in your brain as well. So those are great things. Anything else you want to add to that, Reagan?
I was just going to say something as simple as keeping, if you're using an app to do these things, keeping that app on the front home screen of your device. It sounds simple, but if you bury it in a folder somewhere, you just don't see it. But if you flip on your phone and you just see that thing sitting right there instead of Twitter or Facebook, you're just naturally going to, that's what you're going to go to, because it's the first thing you see. So little things like that just make it easier on yourself by keeping it top of mind all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And I just looking in the chat here, there's a few good comments here. If you've got a comment or you want to share something with us or with those who are watching, leave a comment. But here's one. Dwayne just mentions that he finds mornings are the best time for him as well. And here's a good one. Ann Harrison says, review on the loo. It's a simple thing, right? But it's one of those simple times where we do have a few moments to spare. I don't know how much we want to talk about that. Probably not a whole lot. But it's a great thing just to sort of take whatever those times are and look at them and so on. So there's lots of little times like that we want to just take, and it may be, not just, it could be maybe you take a train to and from work each day or once a week or whatever it is. Again, just use those times, make use of them. And again, it's not that learning Greek is particularly challenging or difficult. It's really that it just takes that mental commitment. And that mental commitment is both a spot of time where you can focus on it, which we've talked about being in the morning, and we've talked about how to make that work. And it can also be those little spots of time during the day as well. That's actually, and just raises another one there as well. Reagan just mentioned about talking through the, with social media, with the apps, having those apps on your front screen. Another thing too is with social media, one of those things, those distracting apps that you would otherwise sort of turn to quickly, there's two things you can do here. One is what Anne says here in this comment, move the social media apps to the last page of your apps drawer, or do what I did and actually just delete them entirely. And I tell you, it's very freeing. You can also turn off notifications. If you're not at that stage where you want to remove them entirely, take the time to actually just turn off all notifications for them. You go into the settings, like on your iPhone or whatever, go into the notifications section, and then turn off, use the switch, turn off the apps that you don't want notifications from. And those are typically ones like, Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, and so on. Now, that's not to say that that's deleting them. It just means that they're not going to pop up and say, hey, you've got messages, come and look and be distracted, which means that you're going to be able to concentrate more on those kinds of things as well. So, anything else you want to add to this, Reagan, before we wrap up today?
I just want to, maybe just a word of encouragement. You can learn very, very hard things, including New Testament Greek, just by having a plan. Like, I think a lot of people, it's daunting because it's, you think, well, I don't have a particularly good memory, or maybe you think, oh, I'm not a particularly smart person. Look, I mean, this is where everyone starts, even the world's best athletes, or the people who get even amazing. And this is not even that we're saying that you need to become the world's best Greek student, but just having a plan and executing on that consistently, you can learn anything. And the Lord has fitted us with minds to do these things. And if we are diligent and we take even just hold some practical means like we were talking about here, you can do this. You really can. And the fruit is definitely worth it.
Yeah, exactly. I just saw one more comment here that's really good. Kwame, hopefully I got your name right here. One of the things he mentions here is having a Tyndale Cowhide edition, which is really cool. Great choice of Greek New Testaments. But one of the things that he just raises here is that it does encourage you to have that desire, and that's one of the things you want to tap into. Really, is what can I do that will drive my desires rather than just making it feel like a chore or a volitional commitment that I have to have? What can I do that will, where is the reward in it for me, and how do I capitalize on that to keep me going back into the Greek and the text and so on? And I know for some people, for instance, I saw Joanne on this earlier a moment ago as well. Where is she? Here we go. Joanne working on paradigms early in the morning during those waking up moments helps her wake up. That's great. But again, you want to just try and capitalize, and I know Joanne does this, with that desire, so that you really want to be there. What are the rewards, and just reminding yourself of those, like the translation. I know it's, reading the text in Greek is like reading a high definition, Bible, if you like, without having to go and get all technical. But then there's actual reward in that. You're like looking forward to the value you get for your soul from the Greek. And so that desire then can actually be a real motivator to get back into it on a day-by-day basis. Now, again, you're always going to find it becomes a grind in some respects. But this is why, and I don't know if I mentioned this before, but really it requires a wholehearted commitment. It's not just about the cognitive kind of, yes, I think I want to do this and I think it will have good benefits. It's not just about the desire, and it's not just about the commitment. You're really wanting to roll all of those three things together. So you've got the reasons, you've got the desire, and you've got the commitment together, and that then drives what you're doing in order to actually make sure that the time is being put aside, you're using it well, and then you're getting the value and the joy that comes from it as well. So Let me just, I guess we're coming to kind of the end of our notes here. So we've got some great comments coming in. Thank you all for sharing these. We've got, what do we got here? So yeah, we've got, so Anne talks about her notifications, turning those off. That's great. And a desire to, yeah, here's a good one. Shouldn't a desire to love God more by understanding His Word better? Shouldn't that be the driving force? Absolutely. That's exactly why we learn Greek. And again, you know, that's where it goes back to that, what I was mentioning before about going into the text, seeing the value that's there for our soul, which is really about, you know, growing in our understanding of Christ and our love for Him. That's what ultimately should drive us into the text. And ultimately, that's why we learn Greek, right? So, yeah, so that's great. So thank you so much for joining us today. I want to just share with you, if you want to go check out, go to redeemingproductivity.com, check out Reagan's ministry there and the work that he does. Check out Power Mornings. I encourage you to do that. It's a great course. Thank you, Reagan, for joining us today. It's been a joy. We've got to do this again. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, this has been a blast. I really had a good time being here with you today, talking about this stuff.
Yeah, so cool. So thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. Don't forget, if you are interested in learning biblical Greek in some respects, feel free to go download my roadmap. I've got to put that up there, roadmap, masterntgreek.com/roadmap. And that way you can get a copy of that, figure out what's involved in the overall plan to learn Greek, and you can get involved as well. And we'd love to be able to serve you inside Master New Testament Greek. Again, thanks so much for joining us today. Thank you to Reagan for being my guest, and we look forward to serving you and seeing you again in the future. Until then, keep taking small, consistent steps. We'll see you then.